at any point has to be finite. The entire timeline has to be
No,
finite.
I'm saying anything that changes, and considering that the point A and point B are both infinitely far away from each other, right? You would never reach point B. Yet if you reach point B, it would not be finite because yes, you're reaching something, and if you reach something that is automatically infinitely far away, that's a contradiction. So you can't do that. So we have to believe that you can only reach something if it's a finite distance from you. Cool. Now if it's a
Such a
finite
squeaking
distance
ass.
from you, that's how I said fast. Now if it's a finite
I mean,
distance from you,
Mhm.
then
Go.
that automatically means you will reach it, and infinity can never be reached. As such, if point A reaches point B is not infinitely far away, and that proves that the being that is reaching from point A to point B is not infinite either.
I mean, the insistence of that implies that the movement of the thing has to be finite at all times, right? Like obviously, objects within from the existence of the Earth, right? Existence, quote unquote, of the Earth, right? All have finite movement, and we're moving for a finite amount of time. So all of their movements will be finite, sure. But the actual extension of time itself, like you can't substantiate that itself has to be finite just because objects that we observe move finitely, right?
Well, no,
I'm only
because
understanding
infinity
your
cannot
premise
be.
in that sense.
Well, no, because infinitely cannot be comprised of finite elements, right? Anything
Why not?
infinite cannot have a finite space within it, right?
I mean, even mathematically, it
Every
maps that out
single,
there, so I'm confused.
yeah, every single point in infinity, each of them have to be infinitely far away from each other.
I disagree, just because even in mathematics, we know that's just not true.
I'm talking about something truly infinite, not a potential infinity.
Something that's actually like okay, so like potential infinity and
Absolutely
truly infinite.
infinite.
What do you mean by that? What's the difference between the two in your head?
Absolute infinity is like there's no start point, there's no beginning, there's no end. Every single point in between it is infinitely far away. That's absolute infinity. A potential infinity is something that is just uncountable or not uncountable, endless in nature. Yet it can still have a start point. So, for example, the distance between 1 and 2 is infinite because of the intervals, like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. And this, I would call this not an absolute infinity, like a lower infinity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what your referent is when you're talking about mathematics, NTR.
Right. So I
Oh,
think
okay.
something like that isn't gonna be the definition of
Yeah, that's not the
infinite
relevant.
distance.
Yeah, that's not the relevant infinity he's talking about.
Right.
Okay. All right. Sure. I'll agree with that. Anything?
Okay. P4, there is change in two different points of progression in space-time. So, for example, the example you presented, then the finite things within it, all that.
Mhm.
Right. Conclusion. No. Premise 5. The universe is composed of space-time.
The universe is space-time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Conclusion 2. Therefore, progression is not eternal, and the universe is not eternal. Hence, has a beginning and a preceding cause.
Mhm.
Okay. P6. Infinite regress. Absolute infinity. Infinite regress is impossible. There cannot be quote unquote no beginning.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Premise 7. Things without consciousness or will cannot move themselves.
Yeah. Things without consciousness or
Yeah.
will cannot move themselves.
Philosophical consciousness, by the way. Yeah.
Elaborate on that.
So, for example, if I have like your PC or whatever the fuck you're using to talk to me on, it doesn't really have a consciousness and it's not really fully conscious. Therefore, it cannot move itself. So, for example, let's say you have a monkey and a monkey is under a tree and the tree falls and the monkey dies. The cause of this can be either intelligent or unintelligent, the cause of the tree falling. So either a lumberjack could have cut down a tree and it fell on the monkey and killed the monkey, or maybe let's say that a thunderstrike or like some let's say tornado came in and ruined the tree and made it fall down and then hit the monkey on the head and the monkey died. So the cause can either be unconscious or conscious. But the key here is that any conscious cause or any conscious effect, any unconscious cause or any unconscious effect cannot move itself. So the tree still needed to be moved. There is no way the tree just fell. and obviously it was either conscious or unconscious that moved it. So basically, what I'm trying to say is anything that is unconscious, causer or effect, is definitely preceded.
But you don't have
as
an
they
issue
cannot
with
move
the
themselves.
but you don't have an issue with the fact that like most things that like pretty much most things we actually observe that move or are affected are unconscious, right? That's not like a disagreement we have.
Sure, most things that we observe can be unconscious and all of that, but as such, they must
Like
also
even
be
in your
dependent
example, right?
on
Like
other
the
things.
tree, like
That
the
money
tree
just
falling from,
hit,
like, the light.
bro.
But even
Right.
in your example, like the tree falling from like because of the lightning strike, right? Like you agree that the lightning strike wasn't a conscious act, right?
Right. It was an unconscious thing. So yeah, so you can have this, but how did the lightning strike? You can ask that question. Maybe it was a thunderstorm, and the thunderstorm was because of the rain cycle, right? And all of that shit. It all can't be infinite, right? It all can't be an infinite regress, right? So since it can't be an infinite regress because of P6, there has to be some beginning, some start point. Yet if you have the start point, the very first could not be unconscious, as it would yet also be preceded. So what I'm trying to say is that anything unconscious, anything without consciousness, still has something before it.
I mean, like, I don't know. My only issue with that is that even looking at like the progression of like the Earth, right? All of the things we have that are currently conscious today came from unconscious effects, right? Like, so it's like the first like any sort of life on Earth based on like the measurements of like Earth existence, based
Well,
on
how did
measuring
you
and
come into
dating.
existence? Did your dad and your mom not have to, of
Yeah,
course,
but like if you go back in time like far enough, like from my mom, my dad, their parents, all that, right? When you get to like the very first like
the
set of
troglodytes and
organisms.
shit, like
What'd you say?
the troglodytes and shit, like the fishes, the fucking pre-evolved humans, all them niggas.
All like any and all like examples of like
Right,
life, like based on like anything
right.
before that. There's
But
nothing
even for
living
that,
or
even for
conscious.
that, even if it has an unconscious cause, that literally doesn't attack the point that even if this cause is unconscious, it cannot move itself. As such, if it cannot move itself, something had to move it.
So you're defining movement as just like okay, physical movement. That's all.
Well, no, even causal movement.
I mean, I don't think time is conscious, so time still moves.
I mean, no, not causally. What do you think
So what do you mean by
time is?
causal and conscious?
Time is the measurements of events inside space. So how is it moving? What is it causing? It's not.
Yeah,
It's just a
what do you
measurement
mean by
of the cause.
causal? What do you mean by causal movements then? If it's not physical movement.
Causal movement is like, let's say, I punch like some faggot ass fat nigga, and his teeth fall out. The effect was I punched him, he got hurt, and his teeth fell out, and the cause was my punch. That's causal movement. My punch to his teeth falling out, causal movement. For example, the monkey in the tree falling to the monkey dying, or the lumberjack cutting the tree down to the tree falling to the monkey dying. That's causal movement. Now, this causal movement cannot be infinite as P6. And we also know that if it's unconscious, then 100% it had to have been since it can't move itself, something had to have moved it. As such, it had to have been preceded.
Yeah, but the thing that's kind of getting me like kind of confused is that like the necessity that like the original like the first cause of almost like most of these things like would have to be like unconscious. I mean, would have to be conscious. Whereas even then, when we look at like life, right itself, like the spark of it, like all
Right,
intents and purposes, there was nothing
right,
conscious before that. Right?
right. But I'm trying to say that this doesn't attack the premise at hand. You're not inherently showing if you disagree or agree with it or not. Because I'm asking you, can something that is unconscious philosophically move itself in a causal way?
No, I guess not, because gravity is what bends and moves
Right,
everything.
okay,
Sure.
so we agree with P7. So
Yeah.
then we come to the conclusion 3. Therefore, there was a first cause, a beginning, and the beginning was conscious, had the will to move itself, and caused everything after. Thus, it has to also be necessary.
Can you repeat this is the last point again?
The last
Point
conclusion,
7, yeah.
there was
This is the last
there
point,
was
yeah.
there was a first cause, a beginning, and the beginning was conscious, had the will to move itself, caused everything after. As such, it has to be necessary.
One interesting thing about like the assertion that obviously we established that there can't be an infinite regress, but then like kind of like a question mark kind of comes in from like the discussion that like where did how did the first cause even come to be, right? Like ironically, right? It's kind of like a self defeater.
If it came to be, then that would mean it had a beginning, but it can't.
Yeah, but if you agree that everything that's cause needs to have a cause,
Well, okay. Do you agree with my conclusion? Because this isn't really relevant. Like, if you want to ask it after the debate, we can. But
I mean, yeah, sure. I think that's fine.
I mean, the conclusion would have
okay,
it
cool.
follow.
Yeah. Okay. So try and get your word.
I think free one is like this entire dialogue. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. To answer your question, how it got come to be. Well, he wouldn't come to be. He always was. There you go.
But doesn't that dismiss your own point of like it's eternal?
No, because
No,
infinite regress
Yeah, so
in a causal sense is about
So you're saying that since the infinite regress is logically impossible, and there would have to be a beginning that's uncaused, something that's uncaused. So no beginning, it's eternal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
I
the
guess.
right, and inside of this thing there is no causal relation.